So the number one question I'm getting asked is, what are you eating, Amer? People want to know what my diet looks like right now. So here's the first thing. This is my only, you guys see that right there? That's my only carb meal of the day. So I have just under half a cup of oats. Okay, see that? Raspberries, blueberries, and a lot of cinnamon. That's the first thing I eat after I work out. So I always work out on an empty stomach. And then I'm having 7 whole eggs for meal 1. I put a lot of salt on it, pepper. So what I'm finding now is that I'm eating a lot better is that you acquire a better appreciation for smaller things such as sodium, such as salt in your diet. Whereas you don't really appreciate that nearly as much when you're eating a lot of junk food. So now that I'm eating a lot healthier, when I have foods like this, I appreciate the cinnamon. I appreciate the berries, the sweetness from the berries, even though it's not a lot. The reason why I have the raspberries, I want to get some fiber in my diet, where it's very difficult to get fiber, obviously, when you're on a lower carb diet. But I don't really feel like the low carb is hard for me right now. It's actually pretty easy. I push my first meal to a bit later in the day, which is this, after I work out, after I've done my work, all of that. And then, yeah, that's my first meal of the day. And then I'll show you the rest of the meals that I'm having throughout the day. They're sporadic. They're not consistent every day, but my protein intake is consistent. My fats are pretty high and my carbs are pretty low. But I find this is the best way for me to diet to sustain my energy, because if I have a moderate carb intake, I find it's a bit too much and my body wants more. So I find if I go lower on the carbs, higher in the fat, I could still sustain my energy while getting leaner without having those cravings throughout the day where I want a lot of sugar. So yeah, here it is. So the next thing I put in my mouth for the day is probably some nuts. Okay, so as you can see there, right, I have Brazil nuts, I have cashews, I have all sorts of different nuts that I eat every day. And I don't weigh how much I'm having, however. You know, when people ask me, do you weigh your food? And honestly, I don't, for a few reasons. I'm not stepping on a stage, but even when I did compete, I never weighed my food because I'm a pretty honest and accountable person. When I'm dieting or when I'm doing something, you know, I don't cheat the process. So here's the thing. I typically eat enough to satiate me for another 2.5 to 3 hours. So I'll eat something to the point where after 2 hours, I'll start to feel hungry again. Not these nuts, but this will just hold me over for another hour or so. And then I'll have a protein shake. But this will satiate me for about another hour, but typically I'll have my meal so it will satiate me for 2 hours. And then after the 2 hour mark, I'll try to push it as long as I can, maybe 2.5 or even 3 hours total until I have the next meal. So I try to eat, and I got pretty good at this. This is intuitive. I know how much food is going to hold me over for another 2.5 hours or so, or until I get to the point of hunger, which should be about 2 hours. And, I do that, which means that every meal is a bit different. I don't eat the same portion sizes every single meal besides protein. I typically have different, even protein actually will change. It will change based on how hungry I am. So if I feel like I'm extremely hungry because I didn't eat for about 4.5 hours just because I was busy, I'll obviously have a bit more protein. But that's how I like to diet. I don't necessarily believe that there's one way of doing things. You don't have to weigh your food. You don't have to do flexible dieting. You can also do intuitive eating, which is what I do when I'm very busy. And I've also done shows like that and gotten in the best shape of my life doing that. But the key is being honest with yourself. You can't be eating junk or lying to yourself and eating more, having bigger quantities and trying to rationalize it by, you know, telling yourself you're hungry and create these stories in your head that, you know, you need more calories and all these sorts of things. So, you know, I would definitely recommend trying it out. I always lose weight doing this approach. And, you know, some of my clients do different approaches than others. Some of my clients do flexible dieting. Some do structured meal plans. And some I just trust. You know, some of my guys will show up and they'll say, look, man, this week I didn't really follow my diet. And I look at them like, well, you're a lot leaner, so keep doing what you're doing, I guess. All I care about as a coach, for the most part, when people are doing a show, is that you look your best relative to your goal. So if you're stepping on stage in 12 weeks, I need you to look as where you need to look for 12 weeks from your show. And however you achieve that doesn't matter so much, because I'm not tied to any specific type of system or process. Meaning, I don't believe high carbs are better. I don't believe low carbs are better. I don't believe HIIT is better. I don't believe LISS is better. I don't believe intermittent fasting is better. I don't have one approach. I believe that everything has its time and place. And when you learn to critically think, you can implement different strategies at different times depending on the feedback that you're observing. So if you only believe in one type of approach for anything in life, it's only going to get you to about 70%. But if we want to get to optimal, that's when we have to use our brain and assess what's in front of us and then make decisions based on what we are assessing in front of us, rather than assuming everything's going to fit into one system or one process or one type of way of doing things, and that's like trying to put a square peg into a circle, or put a circle peg into a square, or whatever it may be, so always keep an open mind to things, try different things out, but I guarantee you'll like this way of dieting. All right, so got to my office. I'm gonna have 50 grams of protein. Okay, so I'm using ISO Rush, Mammoth ISO Rush, chocolate flavor. Now, I'm not a huge fan of chocolate flavor, just because I get sick of it and it's really sweet. And when I'm dieting, I don't really like sweet flavors. It's weird, nearly as much. So, but this one is not too bad. So this is probably the only chocolate one that I drink. Otherwise, I drink Dymatize ISO 100. And I'm not sponsored by either of these companies. I just like the product, and that's why I'm promoting it to you. I'm having my final meal for the day, which is one, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 whole eggs boiled, a handful of Brazil nuts, cashews, peanuts, and broccoli with a lot of Himalayan sea salt on all of it. Now, guys, I eat now when I'm doing this solely for how I feel and ensuring that I'm getting adequate amount of protein, getting adequate amount of micronutrients in my diet, making sure that I'm getting a very high fat intake with a very low carb. I've gone very low carb. I've actually even gone very low calories, believe it or not. I've dieted for shows where I was probably eating like 600 calories a day. And you know what? I never got any metabolic damage. My body was never damaged. Your body auto-regulates very well. Your body adapts to different types of stress very well. And a lot of the things we do to our bodies can be reversible as long as they're not done for extreme or strenuous long periods of time, where we're, going years and years like that. So under short-term acute stress, the body is pretty adaptive. But this is nothing for me, guys. This is easy now. You're at the point where it's a breeze. A couple weeks deep, it's a breeze. You hit that tipping point. Now momentum's carrying you forward. That's what this is about, building momentum, making it automatic. Your brain doesn't have to do work anymore. It's just clicking. Let's get this meal in. Let's go to bed. Wake up tomorrow. Do it again.